The latest Omen movie has dropped in theaters, so it's time to take a look back and rank all 6 from my least favorite to my favorite. Hey everyone, and welcome to Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know in the comments below how many Omen movies you've seen and how you would rank them from your least favorite to your favorite of what you've seen. Let's have a nice, lovely discussion down in the comments below. Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, and if you do, please consider subscribing if you haven't already to join in this film culture community where we talk about movies each and every day here on this channel. But going in last place, we have Omen for The Awakening. But it's essentially the final film in this franchise chronologically. The timeline just does not do it justice for the way they go about all these different ideas. The performances are not too hot on its toast, and just the way they go about these different characters and the atmosphere is not built up to be nearly as creepy or unsettling as the way they use the camera or use the sound to build up the tension of everything we got previously in this franchise and what they do with these characters. Certain things of how they use the different powers, how she's used as a daughter of the Antichrist, just isn't using justice to how you're utilizing her character. Some of the first scenes of what they're doing is just her behaving as a child would toward people that are making fun of her, and it's just child bullying in a sense. And there's certain aspects that raises a lot of questions of how people cause suspicion, or certain actions that don't get the questions raised based on certain things that she is doing wrong, or other things that are happening that just go and people don't take the time of day to figure out certain things that don't give clues to her being the Antichrist, but just going about the way that they're not figuring out the things the way you naturally would be. And coming in number 5, we have the Omen reboot. Now this one just does not do any justice to the franchise, being in the backstory of this film, given that they wanted to release this film on 6/6/6, which is June 6, 2006, and just the way they rushed this film just does not feel like it warrants any sort of release, just with having the same story and not having the performances that do any service to what this movie is doing as a whole. Rebooting this film and being a direct remake, feeling like it's a direct copycat. That I don't have a problem with copycat films as a remake in general, but when they don't have nearly as much to offer, nothing is really added, or what they do have added just doesn't add too much to the story and doesn't add anything special to this time that is given. And what they have with the performances does not have enough stamina or atmosphere that gives off the same environment or general vibe that you're getting from the music. The filmmaking is decent, but nothing special to what you're working up to be, and nothing about the acting or certain performances just give off the same general vibe that is unsettling or creepy, making it feel very pointless and not necessarily a bad film because it's essentially copying a really good film. But the writing itself does not deliver as well with everything else that is put on board with the production. And coming in number 4, we have Omen 3, The Final Conflict. One that is very interesting by its concept, being essentially the end times and the Antichrist versus Christ, what they're building up to with that. And I'm not expecting a big showdown because that's not the history that they're necessarily building up to directly, but with what they're doing, there's a lot of buildup behind this political agenda that he has to get. And while that is an interesting sentiment to this franchise, and it makes sense for this character because he's trying to take over the world, so he's becoming in world power. But there's a whole lot to the political side of that it becomes less interesting because it's a political drama, and how they're setting up all of these different aspects to make sure he's up on top, and then having all of these different side quests along the story just builds up and divides the story into multiple different sections. And while you have some good moments where there's good kills along the way, with the way that certain things are set up, there's just things that aren't delivered as effectively, even if Sam Neill as the Antichrist is good for a grown-up version of that character. And coming up number 3, we have The First Omen, a good and effective prequel to this franchise. With what they do, even though you know what it is leading up to, it is good for its own merits, for its story, for its cinematography. How it's really performing as a whole is good for its own means, and how you're getting the effective merits to the build up and the tension and the music that really drives home the force that it is building up, that becomes still compelling by the nature of the film. For me, the biggest detractor is the runtime and what you're getting all with that, and unfortunately it came a couple weeks after Immaculate, which is a story with a very similar plot and very similar scenes throughout most of it, and so just the general vibe of it is thrown off a little bit, at least at the time being. It is still the better film over that, and it is a good film on its own, but it just feels detracted by the length that you have to sit through when we already know where it's going through. And while it's still compelling enough, it doesn't have the good nature, high tension that really drives home its force. And coming in at number 2, we have Damien, Omen 2. While this is a little bit of a guilty pleasure, just by the kills alone, it might be the consistent best in the franchise throughout. Once you're getting one kill, you're getting something that cycles throughout. Adding the inclusion of the crow, it is certainly disturbing the way they utilize that, but unfortunately they sort of abandoned that atmosphere halfway through based on certain inside room kills. With the way they set that up, it's unfortunate how they have to separate that guidance. They change a few rules from the first Omen movie that really makes it confusing, but it still works enough on its own film. And having Damien have his own character because he's grown up, has a voice, has these characters, and an inner conflict of being known to be the Antichrist once he finds out that, and everything that goes in, and sort of an acceptance near the end of what this all entails, how this really builds on the struggle of what we got as a sequel to the first Omen movie, leading up, passing him on to his brother, of what we got from Mr. Thorne, and how we explored that new nature, essentially exploring a similar story that we got in the first, but very different still in its own ways by the way you're building up this new age of Damien and this new environment, building up different natures to these characters as a whole, and establishing a brother, establishing where this Damien is going in his setting, and the powers that are explored within him. That makes it just a fun time in general, even with its creepy atmosphere throughout. But that leaves at number 1. The Omen 1976 is still just a classic. I watched this for the first time just last October, and I still enjoy it. I appreciate it a little bit more upon rewatch just as I prepared for this review, and I don't love it particularly, because certain parts of its runtime, it feels a little dry, it feels a little bland by the nature of its going through, but that doesn't take away from the good writing, the atmosphere that builds up, the camera work that accentuates some good atmosphere, and the setting, the naturalness, and the good effects for its own time. And what they have for the nature of this film, it is disturbing. The performances, even with the child, is disturbing. How you're just getting certain looks that look more effectively than what we get in the young children that we get later in the franchise. Once you're getting the daughter or the Omen reboot, it just doesn't perform as well. And what we're getting with the nanny as well is disturbing as well. And there's a few good fights, a couple good kills that really build up what makes this to be a good film, a horrific, eccentric film that builds upon its own natural environment, its own lore, and while it is the slower pacing film, it still holds on to its own 2 feet, onto the writing that makes it to be a well-established film that has the horror that works perfectly for its own means. And so that's just my ranking of all 6 Omen movies that I've seen, from my least favorite to my favorite. Let me know down in the comments below how you would rank these movies if you've seen them all, and what you think of the new one as a whole. So that's just all. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like this video, subscribe if you're not here to join in this film culture community. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.